Again, what does it look like? Slow pace breathing versus 16 breaths per minute, or what we'll call, again, normal breathing in a group of those with hypertension and those that are considered a healthy control. Well, what we found is that when we engage in slow pace breathing, when the groups engage in slow pace breathing, this is both the healthy controls, and this is also in those with essential hypertension, we saw a decrease in heart rate, and we saw a significant decrease in blood pressure. One of the interesting things, though, is that those with hypertension, so those who were diagnosed with high blood pressure, actually saw the largest decreases in blood pressure. And this is incredible if you think about it, because a lot of people in the US right now are struggling with hypertension, which is one of the primary, if not the primary cause for exacerbated symptoms of cardiovascular disease and the potential for heart attack and stroke. So what we know is that if we can engage, and again, slow pace breathing, which was identified as 6 breaths per minute, then we can significantly decrease blood pressure and decrease heart rate. The other cool thing is that we see a significant increase in heart rate variability in both groups, but most specifically, we see it in those with hypertension. Now, the question is then begged, like, why do we see the effect take place more significantly in the group with hypertension? Well, the way it's kind of explained in physiological research is that if you take somebody who's never worked out before, who is maybe in kind of like, let's say, an unhealthier condition to someone who like exercises, engages in resistance training, you take them and we get them on a workout routine, they're going to see faster gains initially than the person who's quote unquote like in the gym, like engaging in exercise. They've kind of already seen their gains, and so they're going to gain at a much slower pace, whereas the individual who is just starting is going to see a really significant gain fast. Well, that's kind of like the proposal here from a physiological perspective, is that the healthy individuals don't have as much to gain from because they're at a different starting place than those who have hypertension. So that's the idea. What else did we see? Well, in both groups and in the we see this increased LF activity. So LF is the low frequency band. I'm going to talk about frequency domains here in just a second, but low frequency band is really associated with the baroreflex mechanism. So the baroreflex mechanism, again, this homeostatic blood pressure mechanism, we see this significant increase when we engage in slow pace breathing compared to normal breathing in the LF band. This is something that's very commonly known in heart rate variability biofeedback in that research realm. And the reason being, we see all this power increase in the low frequency band because we're engaging the baroreflex through the vagus. So that's the proposed. Like, we don't have strong evidence. And by strong evidence in the scientific world, I'm talking about like we have kind of like this is the identified component or mechanism of action. There could be plenty of mechanisms of action here. However, what we do know, though, is that there's significant evidence that the vagus nerve does modulate that baroreflex mechanism and increase the power that's found in that low frequency band. We also know, too, that as breathing rate decreased, there was an increase in HF power, which is high frequency domain. Another commonly held notion in the world of heart rate variability biofeedback research is that we typically will not examine or look at kind of the power changes in the high frequency band when engaging in low breathing. And that's because all the power in low pace breathing or slow pace breathing. And the reason is because all that power is really shifted primarily into the low frequency band because of the baroreflex mechanism. So we don't examine that. They indicated it, but I didn't hold a lot of weight to that. So when compared to controls, what we know is that resting baroreflex sensitivity actually decreased in the hypertensive patients, which is kind of interesting. So baroreflex sensitivity, when we were comparing them to the controls, it decreased, which isn't a huge factor because of what I'm about to say, is that we actually know, though, that after time of engaging in slow frequency or slow pace breathing, is that blood pressure was indeed better regulated amongst both groups, but especially within the hypertensive group. And after time, we see that, again, slow-paced breathing is really capable of shifting us into a sympathovagal balance that's more kind of dictated or towards kind of that vagal response. And over time, we increase the sensitivity of our baroreflex mechanism. So it's kind of like initially they saw kind of a decrease there, but it might have been too because the body was kind of like, what's going on here? Like, I'm having a hard time adjusting, almost like this was stressful. But over time, it becomes used to it, and the thermostat indeed actually will change. So that's pretty neat. In the end, what the authors concluded is that this is a pretty safe approach to managing hypertension, or at least can be an adjunctive. Now, I'm not saying that this is the replacement for all other things. Like, you don't need to exercise, you don't need to eat right, like you don't need to, potentially even take medications. Like, I don't want to demonize anything else or throw anything else out and say, all we need to do is slow pace breathing, heart rate variability, biofeedback. It's just not the case. But what we're saying is that this is a great additive, adjunctive, and is shown by science to help in this study. So hopefully that was informative for you. Again, the name of the study, Effects of Slow Breathing Rate on HRV and Arterial Baroreflex Sensitivity in Essential Hypertension, Journal of Medicine 2021. This is, again, like a mouthful, but hopefully that's helpful. All right. So now let's shift our focus over to the Q&A. Q&A, again, all listeners submitted, you guys and gals submitted the questions over to us. If you hear your name, you hear your question, reach out to us. You can DM us on Instagram. You can send us an email, podcast@hanuhealth.com. That's probably the best way to do it, podcast@hanuhealth.com, because you can put your name, your information, your username, whatever, and then we'll send you out a gear package. We need your address too. All right. Question 1. This one comes from Matt. Matt asks, I'm having a lot of difficulty with time of fitting in training for my nervous system. I know that I should be doing more and that there are a lot of things that can help me with my HRV, but is there something that you recommend for everyone every day? So basically, is there like one thing that everybody should be doing for HRV, or more so for nervous system resiliency, for stress resiliency, for stress adaptation? I like this question. I hate this question. Sorry, Matt. I don't mean to say like I hate your question. Like, I don't like to box us into saying I have like one approach that everybody should be doing, but I do have an answer for that. Like, I really have an answer like that. I think everybody should be doing a lot of different things that I'll talk about here in a second. But there is one thing that I think that everybody can do kind of regardless of their situation, regardless of their means or resources. And you probably know what I'm going to say, but it's the most researched and evidence-based response that I have. So I'm going to tell you here in just a second. But I like this question because, again, I do think I have a response for everybody that can help them. Not because it's my opinion, but because it's, again, backed in science. And if you were to jump onto PubMed and you were to look at, okay, so what are all the research studies on HRVB, which is HRV biofeedback, slow pace breathing, for nervous system stress resiliency, like, you're going to find thousands among thousands among thousands of studies on this. And so what my answer right now is going to be kind of entailed in is going to be that research. It's going to be like, this is kind of what we have found is really kind of the lowest hanging fruit. There we go again, my catchphrase. So, Matt, here we go. Okay. I wish I had a drum roll. Can I insert a drum roll somehow? Yeah, I wish I could do that. Okay, drum roll in your mind. It's slow-paced breathing. It's conscientious breathing. That is the thing, that is the low-hanging fruit that everyone could do. So if I said or had to say there was one thing that I believe every single person should be doing every single day, it would be breathing. You need that to survive. You can't just hold your breath all day. I don't know. Some of these free divers might be able to do it. I mean, David Blaine can do it. But that's again, the low hanging fruit is slow paced breathing. And I'm not even talking about, HRV biofeedback. I'm not even talking about like anything that requires any bit of technology. I'm talking about slow paced breathing. It could be you counting in your head, doing a 4-6 breath, pacing yourself at 6 breaths per minute. Or if you know your RF rate, your resonant frequency rate, you could do that. But there's nothing right now in the research that is as compelling in regards to what can make nervous system change and stress resiliency change than slow-paced breathing. Now, again, I think that you can put on some additives like HRV biofeedback. So receiving some feedback from your physiology from an HRV standpoint, I think that can be extremely helpful. And I think a lot of people can gain a ton of great benefit from that and probably should do that. However, again, if you had to do anything every single day, is that you want to send your nervous system a direct signal that it's safe, that it's secure, and that you can modulate it at will. And you do that through slow paced breathing. 4-6 breaths, 5 breaths, 4-8 breaths, kind of whatever kind of fits your RF rate, whatever fits kind of your feel, like what you subjectively like. I love to kind of marry that idea of subjective, feel and breathing with objective data, even though, again, I'm not talking about the need for data. I think that's important. Talk about here in just a second, but it's breathing. So that's my short answer. If you are not engaged in breath work on a daily basis, like, this is my call to action. And a lot of people might say, okay, well, how long? Like, what should I